Insurers set to receive millions in state grants could start writing new policies in just a matter of weeks.
Sabrina Wilson has more from our newsroom. Sabrina.
Before they get the money, the insurers need to enter into cooperative endeavor agreements with the Louisiana Department of Insurance, and Donald expects that to happen very soon. In fact, he expects that to happen within the next week or two, and then the insurance companies will receive checks from the state. So Donald thinks those 8 companies will probably start writing new wind and hail policies the middle of April. Still, a veteran insurance agent says when it comes to lowering insurance rates, the cost of reinsurance is a big factor.
I'm not anticipating that existing companies with their price structure in place will lower their premiums to compete with the new companies, but there will be pressure because I do believe these new companies will be offering cheaper prices than the existing companies that have been experiencing the losses of Laura, Delta, Zeta, and Ida.
The reinsurance rate has to go down. So whether I have an insurance company or you have an insurance company or anybody has an insurance company, they're buying hurricane insurance from London and Bermuda. They all buy it at basically the same price. So until that rate goes down, well, the overall rates will go down.
While Stephen Lavecchio of TWFG Insurance thinks having more competition in the insurance market will be good, he doesn't think property owners should expect rates to drop to levels seen several years ago. And Lavecchio doesn't think big national insurers will decide to resume writing wind and hail policies in areas vulnerable to hurricanes because of the rule that says insurers can't just drop policyholders willy-nilly who've been with them for 3 years.